take you home.
Hello and welcome to the Help My Unbelief podcast, the #1 Christian podcast designed for the unbeliever. What's up, dude?
Hey, man, I'm just blown away and excited today.
You're excited. Why are you excited? I want you to tell the people why you're excited today.
I am actually excited because I reached out to my brother, who is a self-proclaimed agnostic, and he agreed to come on and talk to me in this format.
Are you nervous? Be honest.
A tad bit, but then at the same time, no.
You can't let your brother know you're nervous, right? You're like, "Ooh, I'm coming for you, brother."
No, we have a good relationship.
Yeah.
We have differences in a lot of thought process on a lot of different things. So we grew up in the same house, in the same format, yet at the same time we have gone completely separate ways. And my lifestyle and his lifestyle was nowhere near each other.
Yeah. How many siblings do you have?
I actually had two brothers and two sisters.
Oh, really?
I just recently lost my older brother.
Yeah. And how many of them are believers and how many of them are not? Do you know? One of them's not a believer?
No, one of them is. And he's sitting right here.
All of them are atheist. Okay. Well, I'm excited to interview him and get to know him and figure out like where we got and then just kind of go from there.
Well, I won't say that all of them are like atheist or anything like that. They're not in that position in life that they are actually doing a lot of thought process on God. Same as I was for 30 some odd years. So
that's the problem I'm seeing in the world is not necessarily lack of belief. It's apathy.
Yeah.
It's
that
just
and distraction.
Not caring.
The enemy's completely got them distracted by everything going on in the world. And it's just like,
I don't care enough to break me free from what I'm doing right now to be able to search that. Then that's such a dangerous place to be.
But God had to do that to me too with the loss of my mom.
How old's your brother?
I have to think.
Let's just talk to him. Let's just talk to him.
There you go.
Let's call him. Okay, what's his name?
Kevin.
Kevin? All right, let's talk to Kevin.
This is Kevin.
Hello, Kevin. How are you today?
Doing pretty good.
Hey, this is, well, you know who I am, but this is Zach.
Hey, Kevin. How's it going, man?
Doing pretty well, Zach. How are you doing?
Doing good, man. I'm excited to get to know you. I don't know. Have you watched any of our show and kind of understand how this thing goes?
I did. I watched one show yesterday. I mean, I listened to the podcast. It's very interesting.
Okay, thank you. So how it's gonna go? We're gonna get into it. I'm gonna interview you and get to know you a little bit, and then we're gonna get into like how our views are, and then we're just gonna kind of bounce off of each other. Okay. I don't have a mean or disrespectful bone in my body, and so that's not a direction that this conversation will go. We've all been in places before where we've had belief or not belief. And so it's just going to be a respectful conversation. I'm going to, we'll say what we believe, you say what you believe, and then we'll end on a respectful note. And if you get too mad, then you can just punch Larry next Thanksgiving and tell me about it.
Oh, okay. But I probably won't wait that long.
Oh, okay, man. I'm super excited to have you on. How old are you, by the way? Larry could not answer that question.
Oh, really? I just turned 59, actually. So.
Turned 59. Nice. Very nice. Okay, so how did you grow up? What would you consider yourself, by the way? An agnostic, atheist, agnostic deist?
I would say that agnostic is probably the best description for me, yes.
Okay. And have you always been that way? Or how did you become that way? I know Larry said he grew up in church. Did you grow up in church? Did you fall away? Or what happened with that?
Of course. We both grew up in a very fundamental Pentecostal holiness church. Our parents were very religious, and we grew up in a very religious, strict atmosphere, kind of very hell and fire brimstone. Although they did take us to the Baptist church when they wanted to scare us, with the movies like A Thief in the Night or the
Burning Hell.
The Burning Hell. Yeah.
You remember that one?
Yep. Yeah.
I remember
absolutely.
that one. I can't remember a lot of things, but I do remember a lot of that particular movie.
Yeah. But yeah, very fundamental. And I would say that I was mostly very religious and probably drifted out a little bit in early teens and kind of got back into it late teens. And I was always very black and white in a way. I mean, I don't know if I was black and white, but it was very absolute and stuff. Either things had to be that way or they weren't. If they didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And I would say I was fairly religious up until 17 or 18. And I remember kind of at some point at that age, kind of grappling with this idea of proselytizing and how could I do that and should I do that? And at some point just got to the point that I realized, this doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't make sense to me that the way that I had been taught Christianity, that this small sect of Pentecostal Holiness Church somehow has the truth when no other Protestant religion or Catholic religion really has the truth.
Do you believe you believe that there is a truth, an absolute truth out there somewhere? Do you believe in an absolute truth?
Do
you believe someone has the truth? I should say.
I suppose that yes. That doesn't mean that I believe the absolute truth is a supreme being necessarily. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the essence of what I am, as somebody who respects our ignorance collectively as a people, right?
Yeah.
And somewhere there's a constant truth to be found. And how well we can put that in a box and stamp it and say it's this or that, I don't know. I think that our pursuit in life is to try to reduce that ignorance as much as possible, but we're never going to get there. We're never going to basically understand enough to really form a really good opinion about what's going on.
Well, see, that's where I disagree slightly with you. Is I do believe there is enough to form a, I wouldn't even say opinion, a good conclusion about God. That would be my opinion, right? That I feel like we do have enough to draw a pretty good conclusion that there's a supreme being out there. But you are right. We will never be able to prove it. I think as long as this world exists, we will not be able to prove it one way or the other. Now, would you consider yourself that you're still seeking the answers, or are you just kind of like happy where you're at and you're just like, I'm good. Or are you still consider yourself seeking for truth and answers?
Well, I think that is what we all do.
Yes.
We constantly try to understand the world around us and make sense of it.
Yeah.
And we try very, very hard to understand as much as we can, but I wouldn't say that I'm seeking the truth in an absolute supreme being or anything like that. I don't think that, being able to get to some point where I can say, okay, this is it, is really my goal. I just want to understand the world as much as I possibly can while I'm alive.
Well, in your opinion, share with me your belief on how all this came to be.
How I came to where I am?
No, how all of this came to be, how the universe came to be, how the world came to be, all the way down to our DNA being so different, the pupils of our eyes being so different, the fingerprints being so different. In your opinion, explain to me so I can understand, because we've never, to believe it or not, we have never actually discussed this.
You and your brothers never discussed this?
We do a slight, just a slight thing here and there, and then that's it. We don't.
Can I be honest with you? That makes me uncomfortable that you guys have never discussed it until now, because brothers can get crazy. How big are you, by the way? How big are you, by the way?
I'm not as big as Larry. No.
You think you could take him though?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
he's like a black belt in Taekwondo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I still want to see it.
He's a black belt in Taekwondo, and I'm a marksman.
Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting it. Don't let my uncomfortableness stop you from answering the question.
Yeah, no, I think I could just outlast him. Okay, that's probably the biggest thing.
There
Well, you
you
could
go.
definitely outrun me, that's for sure.
I've seen him get tired sitting down before, so you're probably right.
Okay, that's not really all that fair.
Yeah, but and would I ever get to a point where I'm comfortable, trying to say that the religion that was, that is laid out in the Bible or that was taught to me as a child, I don't think that I would ever see myself in a position where I would accept that as some type of absolute truth. And, when I say we're all seeking answers, I mean, I believe that. I believe that more than anything, what we need to do is respect our ignorance. And how I try to understand and explain ignorance to me, it's like we know that probably there are more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand on a beach. Grains of sand on all the collected beaches in the world, right?
Yeah, and
Yes.
I learned this recently that in between each star, there is, if you were traveling, I think at 25,000 miles per hour, it would take you 250,000 years to go from one star to the other. And then the number of stars in the universe is infinite. So, I mean, you could be traveling at the speed of light and never reach the end of the universe in a person's lifetime. It's just insane.
Absolutely.
I want to know who did the math on that.
Well,
Einstein probably started it. Einstein probably started. He's the one that Einstein's kind of one that kicked off like the mathematical equations of the universe, right? Am I wrong on that, Kevin?
No. Well, certainly. I mean, he certainly is the one that kicked off an understanding of time and relativity and its relation between energy and mass and things like that. I think his biggest contribution was how we understand time.
Yes.
And how we understand that more than anything.
Yes.
But I mean, the theory of relativity. I don't know that he was necessarily an astronomer, but it laid the foundation for understanding, astronomy overall.
Well, no, he wasn't, but he definitely dipped his toe in the water. Like he was definitely one of the guys that was trying to use math to see whether the world had a beginning or the universe had a beginning or not. Because he wanted the universe to be eternal, because I think he was an atheist as well. And he
certainly adopted that static model, and he didn't really go for the Big Bang, right?
No, but he did was starting to lean towards, in the end of his days, that the world did have a beginning, that there was a beginning, and it was created from one single source, right? But he would never admit it was God, obviously. So, but he definitely was heading in that direction.
If I could kind of get back to my analogy, if we think about each grain of sand on all the beaches in the world, maybe representing one star, and what we think we know about that one solar system. If we think about what we know about the Earth, if we think about, what we know about our own body as a fraction of what there is to know, and what we know about that one grain of sand compared to all the other grains of sand, it is just a very healthy respect for our collective ignorance. And so we don't know anything. We don't know anything more than we did a few thousand years ago, whenever we attributed every thunder to some type of clash between gods and things beyond us. And so I think that's more than anything is this respect for ignorance and respect for us. The world's an amazing place. It's a deep, fascinating place, and not just the world, the universe. And what we want to do as humans is we want to have answers. We want to be able to say, this is that. And we've always wanted that. We've wanted to say, well, and we've taken extreme measures as a people, right? We've sacrificed children, to appease God because we didn't get quite the corn crop that we really wanted. We've done that collectively as people. And our ignorance has always been something that we've grappled with. And at the end of the day, I respect that ignorance. I respect how little we know and how little we will ever know.
Yeah. Do you?
And given that, I don't feel like I have to label it. I don't have to say, well, this is, I don't have to provide those answers.
No, of course not.
That's to me.
But let me ask you this question, because that's something I think about too. That's something I think about, exactly what you're thinking about, because it is apparent that we don't even close to know anything about anything, right? Even about our own bodies. Even about our own bodies, we don't even know probably 5% of what's going on in there, or how it's going on. And we're not even controlling what's going on inside of our own bodies. Now, my question to you, though, is if there is a God, right, and the Christian God is true, and he is exactly who he says he is, he created everything that we just talked about and more in 6 days. So wouldn't you think it'd be reasonable to believe that if that God does exist, that we don't even come close to understanding him at all, and how fascinating he is, and how, I mean, just to think about all this and that he created it in 6 days, that's fascinating to me.
Sure. I mean, I suppose if we said that, if we take the assumption that everything was created by a supreme being, by God, obviously we couldn't fathom him, and if we can't fathom him, we certainly can't, explain his political positions, like I think we often do in modern churches.
That's the problem. Well, and we often label him evil, not evil, or anything else like that, or contradictions in the Bible and stuff. And I always lean towards, like, maybe I just don't understand what's being said or why the reasons are, because we're so little.
Well, one of the things that I'm noticing in most of the people that we talk with, and most of the studying that I have done to prepare, is that we take the actions of man guided toward, or meaning toward, a God, and that is with a little g, and then we take one God and blame him for everything. Those babies that you were talked about that were sacrificed to a man-made God that was formed in a statue and heated up from the inside, and they would lay those babies on the hands that were thousands of degrees.
Is that in the Bible, Larry?
Yeah, and that's how they would sacrifice.
Was that Christianity, or
no.
not? Is that
Negative.
Old Testament?
Negative. And even the Mayans threw them into the volcanoes. I mean, there's all different
human sacrifice
times.
Right. It was a part of every religion, including the Old Testament and the New Testament, which I could argue for quite some time about how I think those are actually separate religions.
But the only time in the Old Testament that it was any kind of sacrifice was offered up to God, Jehovah, was Isaac, which was Abraham's son, and that was stopped. That was stopped before he actually slayed him. The other only human sacrifice that was offered up to God was Jesus, which was God's son himself. So everything else was, if you read, they offered up babies to Baal, B-A-A-L.
Oh, that was the Israelites, right?
Not the Israelites.
Or the Egyptians. Never mind.
Well, you had the Egyptians, but you also had the Philistines.
Yeah, okay.
You had Romans that offered them up. You had Greeks that offered them up to Zeus. I mean, there are several different. I mean, there's so many gods in that particular region. What is the definition of a god? It's anything that you put before God. Say, I can turn anything into a god if it has 100% of my attention all the time, then I am putting that in front of God, and therefore I am worshiping it. So, and I'm going to pick on some football fans here for a minute. If I made football my life, and I did not gear any thought process toward God himself, then that would be the God of my life. That's idolatry, right? Yes. And I tended to turn the Harley, pool, iced tea, drinking. Mm-hmm. I mean, sex. All of those were gods to me. Yeah. Now, that's with a little g, because it required every bit of my attention. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I kind of went over and found out a little bit. Kevin, I want to take just a second. I do I want to ask you, you said in the late teens, and you and I both know that was about the time that Dad left. First off, I know that you sacrificed, and you stayed home and helped Mom with everything, and at the same time, you managed to keep all your scores up. I'm just saying this because you not only went to college, but you actually went to OU, and you kept your grades up while maintaining 2 jobs. And during that time, I was actually already married, already having my first kid, and second kid was during that same time that you were doing all of this. And I just needed to tell you from my heart, I appreciate you sticking with Mom the way you did. I really do.
Well, thank you for that. I don't feel like my thoughts at the time. I've always been somebody who read a lot and who was curious. I don't think it had anything to do with the trauma maybe at that time, but I think it really just came to me trying to make sense of the world and deciding this is how I see things. It didn't make sense to me that, once I decided, it didn't really make sense what the Pentecostal holiness faith was saying about this and that and the other. And really, when I started thinking about the other Christian religions, if we look at other Protestant sects or we look at Catholicism, none of that really made sense either. When we think about the essence of what those were, they were really about men and about people who had power over other people. I would think that if there were a God, it would be much bigger and much more amazing and much more fascinating than anything that any religion tries to describe,
Oh, yeah, that's what one day I felt like God was talking to me real, like, big time one day. The Holy Spirit, we call it the Holy Spirit. It talks to us, right? I had a racist guy come up to me, and he told me that he was telling me a story about a black guy that had came out and was talking to him or something, and then he called him the N-word, and he said no N-word ever is going to be allowed on my lawn, right? And then right after that, he somehow snuck in the fact that he was God-fearing, and I just kind of kicked back, and I was like, man, you just called another human being a derogatory term and then called yourself God-fearing in the same sentence. I was like, that's crazy. And then so it got me thinking, right? It got me thinking, because I thought to myself, I was like, man, I hope God's black. And I thought, because if God's black, he's going to get up there and he's going to tell that guy, he goes, I'm not going to allow you on my lawn, right? And I thought about that. And I thought about how poetic that justice would be for that guy. But I got to thinking even deeper. I said, what color is God? And then I thought instantly, he's all of them, or he's none of them, or he's colors that you've never seen before, which is weird to think about, right? Like, God, and the reason why I'm saying that, Kevin, as I'm answering your question, is I think you are right that God is more fascinating, more amazing, and more awesome than any human or any book, including the Bible, can describe him. I think he's way bigger than, better than even the Bible describes. I mean, it blows our mind,
Infinite is a small word to describe God.
Yeah.
It does not fit. But like you were just talking there, and you're giving God human attributes. We didn't invent God. God invented us.
I'm using it as a joke, right? I hope God manifests himself as black to that guy. You know what I'm saying? Say, hey, you can't come on my lawn. And then he's going to go, oh, I know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like,
so shortly after college, Kevin, you headed off to join the Peace Corps, right?
Right.
And you ended up down in Quito, Ecuador. Did I say it right?
Not quite. Quito. Yeah. Okay. Quito, Ecuador, yeah.
Yeah, so you're absolutely fluent in Spanish.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, absolutely, it would be something my wife would argue with, but okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, yo puedo hablar español también.
Okay. Sí, podemos hablar en español, pero mi hermano no va a entender.
Me puedes decir malas cosas de Larry.
There you go.
I said we could talk bad about you behind your back.
Yes, because I have no idea what anything was said there except the Larry at the end of it.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide that God or religion wasn't for you? Was that while you were down in Ecuador?
No, it was before that. I think around 17 or 18. I think that I got to a point where I was really trying very hard to make sense of the world around me. And, you know, if you look at the fundamental Christian religion, Pentecostal holiness religion, I mean, it's pretty strict, right? I mean, there could be a rapture that occurs at any time. If you sin and you don't ask for forgiveness, you will not go up in that rapture. You'll be left behind. And if you're somebody who sees things like either that's true or it's not true, then that can be kind of traumatic growing up with and thinking about life in terms of that. And like, oh my God, where are my parents? Where are they? Oh my God, did the rapture happen? Did I left behind? Now I've got the whole apocalypse to deal with. I mean, it kind of, I think I thought about that in terms of that. And I think I just got to a point where I thought, you know, it doesn't make sense. And if that doesn't make sense, maybe none of this makes sense. And
that's what stinks like, you're an intellectual, it's obvious, right? And the only thing that really happened there is people, when you were younger, I think they failed you. They failed you at describing that properly, because you are describing what and fairly close to what Christians believe. But I do not believe like if I was going to walk out of here and stub my toe and say the SHIT word or whatever, I don't believe if the rapture happened 5 seconds later, I'm not going, right? Because if that happened, then, I mean, I cuss all the time still. That's one of the things I still deal with. So, like, if the rapture happens, I probably haven't repented from cussing just yet. You know what I mean? I feel like
it's not a sin in the Bible.
Well,
there you go.
Well, I believe that Jesus covered our sins one time, and the sacrifice was for one time, past, present, or future. And I think the only way you lose that is if you removed yourself out of God's will. That's it. If you're following God's will, you've dedicated your life to God, you're obviously going to sin still. We're human. We suck. Like, I agree. I suck, you know, but if you remove yourself out of God's will, I think that's the only way you lose
just like that. With King David in the Old Testament, King David did have, God says a heart after God.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, it actually shows several times in the Bible what his sins were and what he did.
Yeah.
But the whole difference is he had a repentant heart. That means that he was quick to repent it, give it to God, and turn away from it. And that's what we have to do. We have to walk with a repentant heart when we're talking about forgiveness.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the story that stands out to me the most about God's character, which would be the story of Jesus, where those Christian leaders inside the church were trying to stone that girl for having sex outside or being a whore or something. I can't remember what they were trying to stone her.
Caught her in adultery.
Okay, adultery. And
the funny thing is that why didn't they bring the guy that was caught with her in adultery?
Well, because he didn't do anything wrong. Guys are cool. It's cool.
It was a setup to trap Jesus to begin with.
Well, yeah, but nonetheless, right?
Right.
He tells the girl, he tells the leaders, he's like, all right, well, whichever one of you guys don't have sin, you can cast the first stone. And then nobody ended up casting the stone, right? Well, Jesus downplayed the sin of the woman, right? And then he stayed after to talk about what the leaders in the church were doing wrong. That's the big deal. That's what he made the big deal. Now, I don't think he's saying that sin is not a big deal, but Jesus came for the sinner, the lowly person like us, and he was very hard on the leadership, the people that were in charge of your youth and your mind when you were younger. And I think those people that taught you are probably going to have some splaining to do.
Well, I would like to kind of go round circle. I really actually never heard your answer to the question, Kevin. What
was
is
the question that I didn't answer?
Your thoughts and explanation of this world, this universe, and people in general. How did we get here?
He's saying he doesn't know.
How did we get
I got
here?
his answer. He's saying he just doesn't. He's comfortable
Exactly.
with saying,
And
I don't know.
Yeah, that's really the essence of it, Larry. I think when we try to make sense around the world, we've been doing that since the beginning of humanity. Is that whenever the thunder happens, we have to offer an explanation, and so we do. It's the gods are angry because I didn't raise my kids right or whatever, and I don't feel like I have to do that. I don't feel like that I have to provide the answer. I'm in awe of our ignorance collectively.
Well, mostly,
and that's really the essence of it.
Well, the reason that I ask that is because any time that I talk with somebody that doesn't believe in God, they come up with the explanation of how everything came about.
Yeah, I mean, science is a good way to understand the world, but it can never be the only way. And I think even scientists will tell you that. And if you look into science, I mean, it starts off in a very strange way, right? So there's a Big Bang, and we don't know what happened before the Big Bang, but that's when time and space started. So before that, who knows? Maybe there was no before that. It just happened. And then it ends with trying to understand, things like quantum theory, where we don't understand where it goes. How many different universes are there? I mean, science begins and ends in a very confused and strange way, and all that is just a methodical way to understand the world. But we at the end of the day, we don't know anything. We just really maybe understand a slight fraction more than we did a few thousand years ago.
Yeah, and I think even if we had the answer of how many universes there were, if there was an infinite amount of universes, I don't think that would answer any questions, even if we knew that answer definitively. What I think we narrow it down to is the beginning of this one. That's where you have to that's where you come to this crossroads at having to decide is, did all this come from nothing? Could it have? Right? Come from nothing. And in my opinion, the answer is no. Nothing can come from nothing, right? That's where it's like something had to cause this, right? And so that's where I have to say, okay, now I have to look into what did this. And then, like, even that is less pulls me towards a logical conclusion that God exists more than things like, I had a buddy, right? Have you ever heard of the Widowmaker artery?
I don't think so. I mean, that sounds like a type of gun, right? Widowmaker?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There is a Widowmaker heart attack, and you can research it. I mean, if you even care to after this, but there's a heart attack that men have that typically happens in men.
It's the main artery shut down.
It's in your main artery, right? And what happens is most men that even start to have this heart attack, it kills like 60% of them. That's why it's called like the Widowmakers, because it just kills almost all of them. Well, I had a buddy in his 30s that had this type of heart attack, and he started feeling real ill and stuff like that. And he ended up going to the hospital to figure out what was going on. He started sweating, almost passing out. I mean, just all these symptoms of a heart attack. And he gets there at the hospital, and they ended up not having to do anything to him, not give him medicine or anything. What had happened was he was having that Widowmaker. He had 100% blockage in his Widowmaker artery, and his body ended up crafting another artery while he was on his way to the hospital and bypassing that artery completely. His body, without his permission, without his knowledge, or anything else, crafted another artery, right? And so I'm not one of these people, Kevin, that's going to say that I think God was like, I think we need a few more years with Aaron, and he crafted him another artery right there. But our bodies were designed for that to happen, if that makes sense. So, so I think God designed our body for that Widowmaker artery, in which if you were to have this heart attack right now, or if I was going to have this heart attack right now, our bodies would attempt to make the same artery. It would do the same thing. It's going to try to find a way to bypass that heart attack that's happening, right? But to me, what's so fascinating about that happening is that happens without our permission, without our knowledge, It just happens instinctively inside it's like our body knows. It's written in, it's almost like how a person writes code into a computer. Does that make sense? And I just don't see how in the world all that could happen randomly. Does that make sense to you?
Well, I mean, yes, but other than, I would say, just because you can't understand how that could happen doesn't mean that it must be God.
I agree.
I mean, and I think that's kind of what we often do is we set up false dichotomies. Either the universe came from nothing or God created it. And therefore, I can't believe the universe came from nothing and therefore it must be God. And to me, everything is always gray. There's very few of those actual dichotomies. And the thing with that, you could say the same thing. We didn't ask for a beer truck to run us over. We had no control over it. It just happened. Was that fate? Was that just because a beer truck ran us over? We don't know.
No, but it is slightly different, right? Because it is slightly different. Just like if you were to have a computer pulled up, right, and it just did something, it just did something on its own without your permission, you would know that someone ultimately wrote it into that computer's code to do that, right? The same way I look at that, what that guy's artery did in the same way. Like, it would be asinine for me to say that anything happens on a computer without a person having to do that. Does that make sense? Without a person having to write that into that computer's code. So I look at that the same way.
Right. That code is DNA, and it's very messy, and it gives some of us horrible diseases. It gives some of us long lives, even though we might drink and smoke and not take care of ourselves, and it's just messy, and we don't understand it. We don't understand why it does this or why it does that.
Do you think it's possible that human beings somehow made DNA messier than what it was intended to be?
I don't know that it was ever intended to be anything. It just sort of is, and I don't know. Certainly, who knows? I mean, there's even studies that are showing that, the actual DNA code and a lot of the things we don't understand about DNA is probably affected by environment in ways that we didn't think so before. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's just, all of it is so complicated. And we should strive to understand it, but we don't.
Okay. So what we're going to do is, me and Larry's going to say something in closing, and then you're going to get the final words because I know you got to get out of here pretty quick. So I'm going to say something, Larry's going to say something, and then you're going to get the final words, okay? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Kevin, first of all, for coming on. Your brother's great. I want to say that, and I'm really enjoying my time with him. And I know it's probably, Larry says he wasn't uncomfortable or nervous or anything like going to this, but I know it had to be uncomfortable for him and maybe for you too. Maybe not. But I'm glad that you guys can still love each other through your differences in opinion. And I'm glad I got to sit in on this and I got to talk to you. I hope someday you'll look into it a little more, but I don't know. And if you want to come back on and have a longer conversation in the future or listen to our show or whatever and comment and come along, we would love to have you around. That's all I wanted to say, but thank you, Kevin.
Well, thank you, Zach and Larry. I mean, this is a very relaxed conversation with you. And I think that's part of it. Part of respecting your ignorance is also respecting other people's opinions. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we don't understand very much in this world, and lots of people have different ways of getting information. And that information and your beliefs are grounded on your experiences and the way that you interact with the world. And those experiences have taught you things that maybe it hasn't taught me yet. Who knows?
Right.
And I respect that. And I respect that we all kind of come to these conclusions on our own. And so I appreciate that. I mean, that's my final word, that I just, that's the essence of who I am, as somebody who loves knowledge, who loves to read,
yes,
who loves to understand the world. And I'm open to quite a bit of different types of information, just trying to understand the world.
Can I,
including the Bible.
Can I suggest a book to you that I think you would like? It is a Christian book, but I think it's a book that you particularly would like. Can I suggest it?
Sure.
It's
sure.
called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, okay? And that's not me trying to convert you, but it has actual, like, way more information in it it's a scientific viewpoint from a Christian. And I think you would like the information that the book contains
Well,
rather than...
I would agree with that sentiment. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist because it's just as much an act of faith to be an atheist
Yeah.
as it is to be a believer in Christ, right?
Yeah, it's a correct
and
sentiment,
one final word, I guess I want to say about Christianity. I absolutely hold dear and have internalized Christian values. My values are the values that Jesus Christ espoused on the Sermon on the Mount. Those are the values that matter.
He was an
and
ethical
I try to
genius.
live my life by those, and I live my life by those values. That's a different thing. And I wish that most modern churches would have the decency to live by those values instead of maybe what I often see as a perversion of those values.
Yep.
And to me, that is the essence of who you are. Charitable. Do you love your neighbor? Are you meek? Are you humble? Do you care about other people? Do you try to make the life of those people around you better? That's the essence of who you should be as a person more than anything, I think.
Amen. And, you know, just to bounce off what you said there, and I'm not trying to fill more time here for you, but in the book of Revelation, actually the very beginning of the book of Revelation, Jesus is writing 7 letters to 7 different churches in the very beginning of that book, right? And it's presumed that it's in the future, in my opinion, that he's writing the letters to churches in the future. 6 of those churches, Jesus had something bad to say, and then one of them he had nothing bad to say, and then one of them he had nothing good to say. So what that tells me is 6 out of 7 churches today that you walk into is doing something wrong, and then 1 out of 7 is doing nothing right, and then only 1 out of 7 is doing everything right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he fought against organized religion his whole life.
He did. And Paul spearheaded that movement in the beginning, was removing that organized religion and also what do you call those traditions, you know, and it started with circumcision. He's like, hey, man, you think you're going to circumcise your parts down there and gain more favor with God? You're wrong, you know, and they sought out to destroy religious things like that, and it's us that has injected it back into the church.
Yep. Well, I've really enjoyed the conversation with you both, and I wish you the most success on your podcast. I think
thank you.
You going out in the world and talking to people who don't agree with you is really the biggest way that you can understand the world and the biggest way that you can help other people. And I appreciate that. So
that means a lot.
Wishes to you.
Okay. You too.
Well, Kevin, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, taking time out of your busy day. And we definitely will have to have you back on so I can ask all the questions that I wrote down.
Okay.
But, man, I love you. Have a good day.
Yeah. Love you too. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, Kevin. Okay. I want to get your thoughts on it immediately. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm humbled that he took the time to talk to me on that. And we didn't get into some of the questions that I had, but that's okay.
Did you have a bunch? I didn't even know you had questions.
My favorite time or favorite thing that he actually said was right there at the end. Even through everything else, he still mentions the Sermon on the Mount and Jesus' teachings, and that's what he bases his core values on. You know, my favorite thing he said? He said maybe he hasn't had the experiences to lead him in there yet. So he's not closing the door to it. No, he's not. The only thing that I want to add to that is that Jesus himself is the only door to the Father, period. Yeah. So if you don't believe in Jesus and you don't believe that his sacrifice meant anything on the cross and you don't believe that he was the Son of God turned to flesh and to walk among us, then that leaves you on the outside no matter how much you know. Yeah. No matter how much you study, no matter how much you think you're wise, no matter how much you do on the good boy list, like our guest last week spoke of, giving God my good boy list. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, just like the young ruler. I did that after that none
podcast.
of that matters. None of that
Nope.
matters if you do not believe
Amen.
in Jesus' redemption through his blood.
You almost had me, dude, on one part where you started telling him thank you for staying at home and taking care of your mom. I was like, I'm gonna cry. I was like, no.
That was from my heart, man.
Dude, you almost had me, man. I was like, oh my God, like
he went through a lot. Now there were several times that he would call me and he would need, because the stuff that he was studying at the time, there were field trips that he would have to take. Now he could get off at one job, but the other job was he was a newspaper deliverer.
Yeah.
And so several times my brother or myself, or actually even my mom and my aunt once or twice, actually ran his route for him on the newspapers because he had a field trip or something to do. And I was just fortunate that I was able to do that for him because, you know, hey, trust me, a newspaper route does not interfere with anybody's schedule except sleep.
Yeah.
Because that's like way up in the morning. And I know that people of your age frame probably don't remember when they delivered newspapers to your house.
I do. I remember. Yeah. I was alive in the 80s.
But I mean, that right there, I know that he really went through a lot. And I know that I was selfish and unable because I was starting a family and my other brother was married and my sister was actually, older sister had already gotten married and moved off to.
So do you think there's a little bit of like, man, I've been this good guy coming from him. He's like, man, I've been this good guy my whole life. I stayed around. And then this guy went out doing drugs and having fun and doing stuff like that. And he's like, I've been the good guy. Why should I believe what he believes? Because he thinks maybe there's an element of I'm better than you in there. I hope I'm not digging too deep here.
No, I really don't think that. I think Kevin is one of the most humble people I know.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully.
He seemed like it. He seemed a gym.
We mentioned Quito, or is that how you said it, Quito?
Oh, Taekwondo?
No, Quito, Ecuador. That's where he went in the Peace Corps. That's where he met his wife. And, I mean, he has had no children.
Yeah.
He's been married for 30-something years, 31 years. He's been married 31 years. He has had no children, and yet at the same time, he supports a lot of his nieces and nephews from his wife, you know, his wife's side of the family.
Yeah.
And has helped with their education and everything like that. He's actually an amazing dude to get to know. I mean,
yeah.
Seriously.
Where does he live at now?
That's the truth of it. He lives in Houston.
Oh, I was going to say, man, that's, like I said, that's a kind of dude I would hang out with and talk to for hours and hours and hours, you know? That's what stinks about having this show and only being able to have like an hour long, because I feel bad because I know you had a lot more questions for him and stuff, but he had a lot of things that was kind of ringing with me today, you know? And he actually did say, I don't know if you noticed this, he did actually say, like, the shifting point on when he decided that he was going to kind of dip out of religion. Did you catch it?
No.
He said that when it was time, and I had to Google the word because I didn't know it. He used a big word that Zach didn't know. Okay. He said that the moment that he started proselytizing, moment that it came time for him to start proselytizing, that's whenever he decided that he was going to, that's when he decided he was going to kind of started to change his mind about getting into it.
I truly hate to admit this.
You don't know the word either?
That is not in my vocabulary either.
Okay, so I know, like, I have a pretty big vocabulary, but I didn't know that word.
Likewise, I'm a reader.
But I Googled it. It says the action of attempting to convert someone from one religion to other. So he said that whenever it was time for him to go out and actually start, like where it came to the point in his religion where it's time for him to go out and start spreading his belief on other people, that's whenever he was like, I'm out. Mm. He actually said that. Go back, like when you're listening to it, he said that, like that to me, that's the clue he gave me in the moment. That's when he decided he wanted to be out. But
well, it does take quite a bit. You know that I witness when I'm out.
To everyone, yeah.
And I don't witness in the way that we grew up witnessing, because I mean I was in quite a lot of programs in church, and so I went to several different places, but I don't witness like that. All I'm doing is trying my best to share the word and then invite them into church, because it's not my place. I mean, it's my place as a fisherman of men to to bring them in, but it's not my place to clean them.
Yeah.
And that's something that they didn't realize back in the 60s and 70s when they were trying to cram it down everybody's throat in all these unbelievable ways.
Yeah.
What they have now has developed into what we have now, which is, man, we got to love like Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to love like Jesus. And Jesus didn't hang out with the religious people.
No.
He just passed his love everywhere he went.
Well, you remember when we were talking about starting this thing in the very beginning, right? Like one thing Kevin said in there was that the way we're approaching it is the correct way, right? Because like, for example, like when me and Angela go knock on people's doors to inspect it for hail damage and try to sell roofs, we sell roofs to people, right? If I were to go knock on the door and be like, hey, you have hail damage and you need a new roof, but we need, we need to look at it right now.
Yeah, thank you, go away.
They're going to say, get the heck off my property right now. So if you go up to people and say,
people that way.
You need Jesus, and you better find him now. And if you don't profess with your mouth right now that Jesus is God, you're going to go to hell.
But
we
can talk all we want. We can run our mouth all we want, and we can condemn as much as they did back in the 70s. And that's one way of what some people do. But why can't we just love?
Yeah.
Why can't we have our actions speak louder than our words?
Yes, it says that in the Bible, doesn't it?
Because if I don't live what I'm talking, then my words have no meaning to anybody. And if I can't love someone who doesn't believe the way I do, such as my brother, such as my daughter, such as my sister, I'm sure. I mean, all of this, I still have to love.
Yeah.
Because it's not because they're my family. I can love the person at Walmart. I need to love her or him or her just as much as I need to love my family members.
Yes.
But I have to love them not in just words. I have to love them in deed and action.
Yeah.
And it's by doing that, then you set the example Christ did.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, you're not setting an example.
You have to make people. You're
running them off.
Yeah. You have to make being a Christian appealing, but in truth, right? It has to be the truth. You have to be acting like a Christian in truth, and you have to make it be appealing, because being condescending and judgmental and all this stuff, like, nobody wants to be like that anymore. We all just want to get along, right? Nobody wants to be like that. So if you're going to be condescending, that's one thing I wanted to say is I've been talking a lot the last couple of weeks about how hard it is to be a Christian, right? And I want to make it clear. The reason why I've been saying that is because I've been talking to a lot of atheists, witches, Satanists, stuff like that say like, oh, I wish you were right. I wish you could be right. And then we can all live on this big old pink puffy cloud with our sky daddy, and we can all just get along and be happy, right? And I'm like, well, wait a second. Like, you're making it out that Christianity is like this pink puffy cloud that's everything's great and stuff like that. Being a Christian's actually pretty difficult, especially when you've lived for 36 years like I have, and then God's got to prune you, the refiner's fire, like you were talking about. God's got to prune you late in life, like it's going to hurt a little bit, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm going through right now. But I also want to say that I would have it no other way. Even if this girl asked this question on a TikTok video the other day, and it hit me. She said, if you knew that God was not going to give you what you wanted, would you still serve him?
Yes.
And I answered on the video. I said, where else am I going to go? There's nowhere else to go.
One of the things that I really wanted to ask Kevin, because he doesn't actually deny the existence of God. He is okay. He's okay and comfortable with not knowing, and that's understandable. Okay, but I was going with this question at an angle of you don't believe in God. So right now I'm going to talk to atheists, and unfortunately you don't know who I am except for a couple of you. If there is no God, or God doesn't care for us, explain to Darcia's complete deliverance of alcohol to me. You cannot explain medically. You cannot explain physically. You can only explain it to me spiritually. That a person can be so consumed by alcohol that she was willing to divorce me to not have to quit drinking. One day, and the next day be delivered completely.
And she didn't
from
have to go
alcohol.
through any.
Now, wait. Let me tell. With no DTs, no rehab, no counseling,
No medicine.
nothing, except giving it to God from one day to the next.
Miracle.
Now, you tell me anybody that's ever tried to quit anything on their own, you tell me that you did that. Because you didn't.
Yeah. It's a miracle.
That means no thoughts of it. That means no desire. Now, I've tried to quit cold turkey smoking myself, several times. And, you still think about it. You think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about nothing from one day to the next.
She never even thought about it or nothing? Never looked back? Never had cravings, nothing?
No.
That's insane,
Even
man.
when she found a hidden bottle that she had, they were turning up over the house where she had hidden bottles of alcohol all through the house.
Wow.
And they would turn up and she would I got to pour this out. I got to take this. And I poured it. And she poured them out in the sink immediately.
Wow.
That would be that was Satan tempting her to step back into that path.
Yeah.
Every time. And why is that? The Bible tells us that when we clean ourselves or get cleaned by the blood of the Lord, and then if we don't keep that connection and that relationship, because dude, it's not about religion. It is about a relationship with Christ. And when you don't keep that relationship with Christ, it's as of a clean house. Okay, you've been cleaned, and then the demon comes back and visits it, and finds it clean, and he goes, "Hey, come here," and he brings 7 more demons into that clean house.
Mm-hmm.
That is what wreaks havoc.
Yes,
and that's what makes it very much harder for somebody who got clean once to get clean the next time.
You bet.
Darcia never had that. Darcia dove into the Bible. She went all in. She's my rock.
Mm-hmm.
She is unbelievable when you talk to her. Just her dedication to God with everything, because she owes him much.
Yeah.
She owes him much because he's delivered her from much.
That's the crazy thing is
right there. And that's why I am so strong on God, and why I want to get the word out there as much as possible, because I've seen this.
Yeah.
Not just in my life,
and
but
that's
I've
exactly
seen this.
That's exactly what your brother just said there, dude. Was that he said he's glad that I've had those experiences, glad that you've had those experiences, and he said maybe I just haven't had those experiences yet to make him tip over that edge of more than just not caring or not or being okay with not knowing. He just hasn't been tipped over the edge yet, and maybe he will. You never know. So anyway,
my prayer is for that.
Yes, and we will pray right after this, and we will pray for his deliverance. Does that sound good to you?
Amen.
Okay, and I guess I'm going to see it. I'll see you all week, unfortunately, but we're going to see the audience next week. I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this show. And even though there's only a few, I know you guys are going to stay with us forever, and you, all 30 or 40 of you, mean the world to us, man.
Amen.
And
tell your friends.
Tell your friends about us. We're going to get cards soon with QR codes. So we love you guys. Thank you. And we are out. I'll take you home. Thank you so much for listening to the Help My Unbelief podcast. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And more importantly, tune in every Tuesday at 9 a.m. for new episodes.